Hey everybody. So I'm here today to be talking on the Inven Global and sort of be talking about sort of the future of esports and kind of where my perspective is on kind of where esports is heading and kind of where things are going. And so happy to kind of address that and provide a little bit of context of the ecosystem and kind of how esports orgs think about creating teams and think about how to structure an organization here in the future. So this is a little odd with no prompt, but cool. So let me just basically say esports orgs are all created at the end of the day to connect with fans. Again, we all have a love for competitiveness, and the idea is that we as orgs basically come together. We create these teams. We go out and we can compete, and really bring that all together and bring a voice to it all. So in creating that, you got to really think about what teams you're in or what games you're in and how to construct those teams. So as part of that, you got to try to be in the biggest games possible. So the idea here is looking for viewership, looking for fan engagement, figuring out what people are watching, and understanding that those are the titles that you need to be participating in. And so for me, the barometer is what I consider tier one orgs or tier one games. And that is games with viewership of north of, say, 1 million peak viewers or AMA, two very different indicators, but just sort of gives you a general barometer of where a game's viewership is. And usually you only hit those sort of numbers at a championship level event. So for me, that's League of Legends, that's CSGO, that's Dota. And then inside of mobile titles, you have Free Fire, PUBG Mobile, and I think Mobile Legends Bang Bang. And so I think there's about 6 or 7 titles. Valorant as well actually just hit that metric as well this year. And so those are what you really consider your large international titles, games where viewership is growing exponentially globally as well. And that doesn't mean that other titles are not great. They're very, very important. They each have their own ecosystem. You can look all the way to Super Smash Brothers, right? Which has no developer support, but is still a highly engaged community that still drives large, meaningful viewership. And so understanding that that's TSM and our long history has always been about playing in those tier one titles in the tier one ecosystem. Even though we're not in some of those titles today, it's continuing to look for opportunities and find ways to get back to those titles, and so that you can get the win championships at the highest and largest level. And so then you look at the next grouping, in any title that's kind of below that tier one level needs to be profitable in some capacity or another. So whether that's Apex, R6, Fortnite, everything else underneath that, you need to be finding out a way that you can drive value there, whether that's from sponsorship sales, whether that's from merch sales, whether that's from skin sales. There's a lot of different avenues around it. But ultimately, it's that mix and that mash of creating that group of teams that you got to weave a story in between and weave a brand in between to really make it into an exciting brand for fans to engage with and to continue the storytelling. So TSM storytelling has always been about winning, right? And a lot of that winning came from our League of Legends titles, but we've actually been expanding that brand strategy outside of just League of Legends. So for Rainbow Six this year, we won our first, world championship as an org, which was really, really good and impressive. Apex and Dota, we both won domestic championship titles. Fortnite, we won 2 domestic championship titles. And then Dota as well, we went to, the international. And to be 100% honest, North America just isn't very good at MOBAs. I think I look back today, the last time, a North American org with North American players won in international MOBA between Dota and League of Legends was like all the way back at 2015 with TSM and EG winning, in their respective titles there. So, we've come close a lot of times, and TSM came super, super close this last weekend at the Stockholm Major to, and that has been a great experience for us as well. But understanding it's like you got to shift eventually the style a little bit. That you can't we can't just be pushing out, hey, League of Legends on a 24-hour basis, but thinking about expanding the beyond the brand beyond just League of Legends and bringing in more of these communities and winning outside of areas of just League. So. Still think League is the biggest esport in the world and will continue to grow. It's just thinking about how TSM is a brand should expand beyond that. So I think there's a bunch of other games out there that I can kind of touch on and address. But ultimately, I think the hard part for a lot of orgs here over the next couple of years, and I think Joe Marsh kind of touched on this a little bit as well, is that we're eventually heading to a point here in the ecosystem where the VC capital money is drying up for a lot of these orgs. There's not easy ways to continue to just burn cash. And so it's a lot of these orgs that I'd say, the top 10, top 15 orgs in the world that have really been mindful about, hey, the sponsorship revenue that they're bringing in, and also, making sure that they've been running a profitable and strong business. Those are the ones that are going to be around. I think you're going to see a lot of orgs make some cuts that are going to be surprising to a lot of people, and a lot of orgs go under, which will be surprising to a lot of people. But it's a hard ecosystem, right? Like we all, at the end of the day, want to have the best team possible and all want to win at these World Championship events, and being part of that winning moment with the community is one of the best feelings in the world. Like going to the Stockholm Major and being in the grand finals and seeing the lights and the crowd chants and all that stuff is like, that's why we all do this job, right? Because we love that feeling and that sort of reward that it kind of gives to not only the fans but also to everyone that works at the org, in understanding that to do that, like, that costs money and costs resources. And at the end of the day, if you're not running your business effectively, it's going to be harder for a lot of these teams here in the future to be able to continue to do that. And so that's something where I got to also take in consideration into the planning and to the future of TSM, that we're not just in every single esport possible and not just throwing a bunch of money out there, but we're starting to be strategic about it. And, I've only been here since January, but a big part of my job coming in was actually help cleaning up TSM and helping clean up and be like, hey, are we in all the right esports? Are we putting our resources in different places effectively? And I still haven't been able to execute on all of that, but understanding is like starting that process and really thinking about, hey, we can't just go out and pick up everything and tell our fans to care about 19, 20 different teams that we're at, but like actually really start to redefine like, what is TSM, what is the focus, what are we working on, and so that has been a kind of big focus of mine here as we kind of go forward. Hope that kind of addresses any questions that anyone might have, but I got some more things that were thrown in the Q&A session here. What has been the biggest lesson you've learned and hope to apply your management of TSM throughout the last year in the organization? So this is a good question. I think the best way I can address this is kind of actually talk about this a little bit. So I come from finance and VC background, and I did that, in mid 2015, before I transitioned into esports. And so a big part of like my thinking and my focus is not just full fan passion, but also having a financial mind to a lot of the decisions that I make. And so trying to run a good, strong, profitable business. And I think that was one of the big things that attracted me to TSM, is that I still believe probably one of the only esports orgs out there that's profitable and has been running a business since 2010 and doing it in such a way where it's not just burning someone else's cash, but doing it in a way that is engaging with fans, but also being conscious and mindful of how you sort of allocate resources. And so one of my biggest learnings that I've kind of come in here with is like, hey, really finding out where are we doing things right, and how do I apply that across the org so that we can be financially strong and be TSM for another 50 years, right? Like, I think there's a lot, unfortunately, there's a lot of orgs out there that are just spending so much money to the point where they won't be able to do that on a regular basis. And you, as a fan, you invest so much time and energy and care about an org, and then for it to disappear overnight, I feel is like a disservice to the community. And so thinking about that in that mindset, I really want to emphasize the point of like, hey, I want to make sure that, you know, we're really building around, you know, 8 to 10 really strong teams here at TSM, so that fans have something to care about here in another 50 years. How do you balance fostering and growing domestic fan base and expanding globally? Oh, this is a really good question. So we have expanded a lot over the past couple of years, especially into mobile, into multiple different regions. So we have a PUBG mobile team inside of India. We have a Wild Rift team in Brazil. We have a Free Fire team in Brazil. And we also have a massive community inside of Japan. And so a lot of this has actually been led by our social and community teams to be going out and building that fan base, and not just putting teams in those regions just to compete, but actually trying to build communities and resonate with the fans in those areas. So even if you look at Japan, this is something that was led by Dunk and was, you know, really one of his childs that he kind of brought to fruition, but was basically an idea of that, hey, TSM is actually getting a lot of organic fans from Japan. And the main reason for that is in Japan, there's been an explosion of Apex and Valorant. And so let's connect with those fans. Let's communicate with those fans. And so that's something that he really led and has kind of helped grow and has actually made TSM the largest esports org inside of Japan, outside of like foreign esports org inside of Japan, from just like a social fan base. And it's just like, picking up resources to communicate with the local fan base, engage with the local fan base, and do it in an organic way has really helped that growth there. And so when you think about expanding globally, with any org thinks about expanding globally, you need to do it in a meaningful way, not just putting a team in that region and expecting all those fans to all of a sudden just start caring about your team, even if you are winning. But it goes beyond of, hey, if you have a team in that region, making sure that you also have the social resources to engage with the fans and the communities in that resources. What other games do you want to be involved in? What games are out there? Yes, I think the number one game that I want to be involved with, and I think TSM as a whole wants to be involved with, is Rocket League. I think it's an amazing title. However, there's current restrictions inside of Epic right now that actually don't allow us to have our branding on the car or be involved in that ecosystem due to, you know, TSM FTX. And those are something that I'm actively working on, like trying to get around and figure out solutions for. But if we can't promote our brand inside the game, then we're literally just a skinless car. And that makes things difficult. And so that's a little bit of peek behind the curtain, that sometimes orgs not getting into a certain game or getting into a certain community is not because they don't want to, but because there's legal restrictions or other sort of restrictions that prevent them from being able to enter those ecosystems. Another title that I'm a big fan of is CSGO, but I've seen how many times North American orgs have tried to get into CSGO and run a European roster, run a foreign roster from North America. And I just don't think that can be successful. We've seen the success of really building a roster from the ground up in an FPS shooter with Valorant, with coming in and just kind of like, you got to have the culture and you got to have the infrastructure and you got to have the resources necessary there to build a successful team. And that's something that if we were to enter CSGO, me as a dual citizen, I would probably want to go to Europe, spend 6 months there, really build it from the ground up and look to run and operate it from Europe. I think trying to run a large tier 1 organization from halfway around the world is very difficult to do. It's not impossible to do, but it's difficult. And so that's something where if we were to enter CSGO, would want to probably look to do that in 2023, 2024, but need to be able to do that in a way that isn't just going out and buying a roster, but actually looking and developing and putting in the right resources and the right people to make sure it can be successful. You emphasize on the importance of connecting with your organization fan base across multiple titles, not just one flagship titles. What are the key factors in trying to make TSMs, League of Legends fans into multi-game fans of TSM? Really good question. I think there are a lot of different communities that all come together to be part of esports, right? And if you keep only servicing that one community, then that is likely going to be your fan base, right? And so figuring out ways to convert fans is sometimes difficult, but I think there are, it's sometimes not even converting fans. It's about bringing new fans into the community and creating a really cool collective of those fans that interacting with each other. We've seen that inside of our Discord, inside of a lot of our other social channels, bringing in people that, hey, maybe this person was a fan of our Apex mobile team, but then they found out about our Valorant team and some of the people and the fans that were in that community, and they kind of build new friendships. And so it's just resonating and making sure that you kind of help bring that together. How is TSM a global brand versus just in LA? Yeah, well, first of all, we have offices in Austin, LA, and Shanghai. So we have offices all over. But it's also understanding that our social networks and our fan base has kind of grown in multiple different regions. And, I think our Japan account is, bigger than, most even esports, Twitter social accounts. And so understanding that, like, you can be a global org if you're able to build out the natural resources to be able to help and engage with those communities. And just because where your one headquarter location is doesn't mean that that's where that's the only community that you can reach, unlike, say, traditional sports leagues. And so I think that's a really, really cool thing about esports is if you put in the time and resources, you can interact with fans and communities outside of your home area and really bring in a wide breadth of individuals from all over the world. And I think that's one of the parts that I love about TSM is it's not just, NA fans, it's that we really do have fans from all over the world. You touched on TSM's ability to sustain growth in the industry where most people are at a loss. What does TSM do to make sure that younger players and creators are also set up for long-term success? So we have a whole program here that was built out by Ali before I even arrived, and it's called TSMU. It's built around a whole sort of safe space community ecosystem that really provides a bunch of opportunities to up-and-coming students and individuals who are looking to enter the esports ecosystem. And so that is everything from game nights to info sessions to resume review sessions to, we host local tournaments. A lot of those different initiatives is just providing opportunities, providing networking so that people who do want to enter esports can do that. And, really hats off to a lot of people who got here before I did and has sort of been done on that end to kind of really help build and bring that out. Mobile games are still quite niche in Western regions, which predominantly focus on PC games and consoles. How do you foresee the growth of mobile gaming inside of EU and NA? Yeah, I think it just takes the right game. The right game brings out new audiences. And I think we saw that with Fortnite when it eventually came out, is that there was a really, really young audience that had never played CSGO, never played any of these older titles, and literally their first exposure to gaming was through Fortnite. And I think the same thing will happen eventually to mobile. It just needs to find the right title. So the big reason mobile is really popular in a lot of foreign markets is just it comes down to disposable income, right? A lot of these markets just don't have the disposable income available so that everyone can go out and purchase PCs, and they just don't have the infrastructure. But everybody has a phone. And so if you can play with your friends and connect with your friends over mobile, that is a much more enjoyable experience than just the same thing as we're doing here in the US, where we connect over Xbox or connect over PC. And for them, it's the same thing here, just as I have admiration for, watching Faker play League of Legends or Steph Curry shoot a basketball. They have in their same regions having their star players play PUBG Mobile, and it just resonates for that community as well. You recently parted ways with chess player Hikaru. Does TSM see the potential for chess as an esport, and what have you learned about the space? Yeah, so I think this is part of, an interesting COVID era situation. So, I love working with Hikaru and wish we could have figured out a way to kind of keep him still here with the community. But also understand that now that COVID is kind of over, Hikaru's no longer sitting in front of a PC as much and is streaming as much, and is going to be heading back to LANs and competing in, the global international championships here going up. And the way he kind of explained it to me is that, a lot of these sort of LAN events are also kind of their own community, right? Like a lot of the chess community outside of Hikaru was all kind of brand new and exposed to Twitch throughout the whole COVID pandemic, where it's like, hey, how do we keep this community alive? Well, let's just play chess, but let's just stream it online through a different medium. And I think a lot of people became exposed to chess throughout COVID, and I think it had a really, really big prominence with that sort of going forward. And so I think it's a really, really cool ecosystem, but I think it can be expanded beyond that. I think it's finding different areas and ways to connect with fan bases in real-time events. So, hey, is there ways that we can find other communities that we can bring them to Twitch and have this all kind of live streamed? So, example, let's just get someone who's surfing. Is there a pro surfer out there who could be coming to Twitch and be able to expand on that community? Are there people who are rock climbing who we can experience the rock climb through Twitch and be able to experience all of that? I think a lot of this that Hikaru actually helped pioneer was helping bring new ecosystems onto Twitch, which we'd never seen before, and created a crazy, really, really cool frenzy around it. And it's something that he pioneered, and I think is really, really cool. Something Evil Geniuses has contributed a lot of their success to was data science. Does TSM plan to expand in this area? What are some of the challenges in working in this new field of esports? Yeah. So under TSM has a few sister companies under sort of Swift Media, and I think one of them is Blitz. And so I think anyone who's played any League of Legends game, TFT, Valorant, any sort of Riot game, and many, many other titles has used Blitz, which is a coaching tool in some capacity or another. And it's been a big part of, TSM's success. And so I think there's a lot of orgs who are looking into finding out ways to incorporate data and, data science into their esports and into their business model. And TSM has done that very, very successfully for a very long time, and generates, has a very strong business model with Blitz. And so, yes, I think TSM is expanding in that, has sort of been a forefront in that. And, I think will continue to be a core part of TSM's future strategy. Wild Rift has been very successful in Eastern regions. This is a bit of speculation, but do you believe there's a good chance that on console it could do well in the West? Not PC or mobile games, but rather a highly franked marketable game with zero market competitors on the platform. Is this something that TSM is anticipating? So I actually have not thought about, migrating, mobile games to console and what that would mean. I will say that console is very, very limited to North America and to Europe. And it does create challenges with us considering entering, console titles. So that could be Halo, that could be Call of Duty, and it just because the audience is capped at a certain rate. Now, if you take mobile games and you expand that into console, I think you're reaching a brand new audience. It's a really interesting idea that I'll probably have to think some more about. From Twitter, what's your favorite game to play? I'd say before this year played League of Legends a lot, but I've been very, very busy and haven't had much time to do that. Now it's probably occasionally every once in a while trying to play some Valorant and some Dota when I get some time on the weekends. Cool. Sorry, I'm getting questions here. Cool. I think that is kind of the list of questions that we've got here for today. And happy to kind of answer anything else. Otherwise, I will kind of transition it back to Jess and thank everyone for the time. Sorry, this wasn't a more interactive conversation, but I hope it was helpful to everyone here.